Shrug family, this week on Barbell Shrugged, Dr. Kamellia Dimitrova. I nailed it. You got to get the little Dimitrova in there. Dr. Kamellia. I've had multiple conversations with her, the podcast just being one of them here, which was very cool. We get to kind of like more professionally lay down a lot of the work that she does. And today, talking about metabolic fitness, how to track it, optimize it. We dig into some really big concepts on the HRV side of things, not just talking about HRV, but how it relates to a lot of the organs inside your body specific to HRV. And the body's response. I also think that a lot of the work that she is doing in her practice is very cool. I actually just watched a 45-minute presentation from her and think that she's really doing some very cool, world-class, innovative things in her practice. So get into the show notes and you can check out her website over at quantumheartinc.com. And then she also has a very cool product on there called Vital Sight, VITALSIGHT, Vital Sight. And that was really what she walked me through in that big presentation. I think there's some very, very valuable things in there as far as tracking CGMs and just how you can collect more data on your metabolic fitness. As always, friends, make sure you get over to aratelab.com. That's ARETELAB.com, aratelab.com. That is where you can learn more about the signature program Arete inside Rapid Health Optimization, all the lab testing, performance analysis, lifestyle tracking, everything that we're going to be doing to take your health and performance to the next level. And you can access all of that over at aratelab.com. Friends, let's get into the show. Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Anders Warner, Doug Larson, Coach Travis Mash, Dr. Kamellia Dimitrova. I did that. Travis,
You did it.
you know what that is? That's me speaking Bulgarian right there. Eastern European.
Yeah, you're basically Bulgarian.
Yeah, at this point.
You should have been a weightlifter. Sure.
Today on Barbell Shrugged, we're going to be digging into cardiovascular health and this really cool idea of your physiological footprint. But to kick things off, Dr. Kamellia, can you kind of dig into exactly what or how your cardiovascular system really plays into a person's optimal well-being?
So everybody knows the heart and the lungs and the vasculature, the arteries. And if is there any beginning point where all the disorders that we're afraid of, like cancer, heart attacks and strokes, that actually start there, right, in your blood vessels. And the heart, most people think, oh, the heart is the one that just like pumps blood. This is so much more than that. The heart is probably the most important muscle in your body. And it's a muscle, just like the muscles that we, used to move, but it moves the blood and regulates these big highways. The infrastructure of the body depends on the heart and the highways, your vasculature. If they're open and well run by the heart and the lungs and the end organs, then everything runs smooth and you feel great. But as soon as something starts building up, like plaque, and we call it atherosclerosis, that leads to coronary artery disease, that leads to stroke and Alzheimer, and all these like bad diseases that we don't want to even hear about, it starts from the heart. So the cardiovascular health is the foundation of your well-being. And without it, you cannot, if your heart doesn't work well and you cannot breathe, you cannot build muscle. You cannot do your work. You have to ask for help and use, various other, like drugs, and you have to go to the hospital and you name it. So to be independent and to have your life checked and you feel you wake up and you're happy, you need your cardiovascular health. And that's a very broad question. I eventually we're going to go to like more specifics of how to optimize cardiovascular health and why, it's like the foundation of everything. But you didn't ask me. I will jump on it. My background, I'm a medical doctor, and I'm fully trained general surgeon. And then I did cardiothoracic surgery, vascular surgery, minimally invasive mitral valve repairs. So I went basically try to fix the body in the most crude possible way. Whatever we thought is broken, we'll go inside, we look at it, and just like the plumbers, we're going to bypass the problem and then hoping, it's going to start working the same again. And for my biggest disappointment, and I did a lot of clinical research and then I found my patients, actually I realized, although the plumbing work was beautiful, brilliant, we all were great surgeons and technicians, our patients kept coming back. They never felt the same. Every time I see a follow-up after surgery, I was expecting to hear, oh, I feel great. I can go and run a marathon. But this never happened. I didn't feel good. They were all of them were on a beta blocker, on a statin, on metformin, because the diseases, the metabolic issues that caused the coronary artery disease that led them to me was never addressed properly. And the medications, yeah, they keep them going, but they didn't have the vitality. They didn't have the joy of life. And unfortunately, we're at this point of science and understanding medicine where we can keep the chronic disease going for a long time. But the human, we become like a piece of meat, just like being there, breathing and taking the air away without, the joy of whatever the living can bring you, the joy of like flying, like running and skiing and do exactly what you want.
Yeah. On just a mechanical side of things, what happens when the blood comes into the heart? It goes around and then it flushes back out into your body to actually be able to be used. What is like the cleaning process of the blood? Like, how do we oxygenate the blood? Just the actual mechanics of what's going on.
I like this question. And I love to talk
Doug, you
about
hear
that.
Incredible.
Cut me off because I can talk for a day or two. So the blood, which is almost 12% of you, between 9 and 12% of you, is like 60% water. And the rest is called hematocrit, which keeps the red blood cells. And there's, of course, many other cells that are responsible for the immunity, for the clotting of the blood when you bleed. So the blood carries oxygen and also nutrients. So when it's in the heart, so the heart has two parts, left and right. And they're just not because they're located. It also means the left is the one that carries the oxygenated blood that comes from the lung and is pumped out from the heart to the rest of the body. And then the right collects the blood that comes from the body that has been used already. We call it deoxygenated blood. And it brings that blood to the lungs. So we have like two circulations. You have the lung and heart, and you have the heart and the body. They're connected. And there's a lot of little details here that we can talk forever. But I will just give you an example why this is so important. I'm a woman, and I work with many women, and women tend to get away from upper body. Most women are focused on the gluteus, on glutes, on the lower body. And very little understanding is why, I don't know why no one wants to do upper body. But the only time I see improvement in the cardiovascular health in women is when they focus 60-70% of their exercise routine on the upper body. So what happens when you do that, you increase the circulation between the ribs, in the musculature of the ribs, in the small little tiny muscles that help with the breathing. So they're like hundreds of them. And then the circulation that's like separate of these two circulations helps improving the breathing. Once the breathing is improved, then the process of oxygenating the blood that comes from the right heart to the lung is much more efficient. And right there is the beginning of I know you do the VO2 max. So that explains why people that, have better circulations, they have higher VO2 max, because the one part of the process is the oxygenation, and this is more efficient. And then the next part is taking the oxygen and using it to create energy in the ATP in every cell. And that is where the muscle, which is the biggest organ in the body and completely under our conscious control to increase it or shrink it, is the next part of circulation. And this is the other part of the VO2 max that you measure.
Dr. Andy Galpin here. As a listener of the show, you've probably heard us talking about the RTA program, which we're all incredibly proud of. It's a culmination of everything Dan Garner and I have learned over more than 2 decades of working with some of the world's most elite performers, award-winning athletes, billionaires, musicians, executives, and frankly, anyone who just wanted to be at their absolute best. RTA is not a normal coaching program. It's not just macros and a workout plan. It's not physique transformation and pre and post pictures. RTA is something completely different. RTA is incredibly comprehensive and designed to uncover your unique molecular signature, find your performance anchors, and solve them permanently. You'll be working with not one person, but rather a full team of elite professionals, each with their own special expertise to maximize precision, accuracy, and effectiveness of your analysis and optimization plan. Arate isn't about treating symptoms or quick fixes. It's about unlocking your full potential and looking, feeling, and performing at your absolute best, physically and mentally, when the stakes are the highest. To learn more, visit aratelab.com. That's ARETE lab.com. Now, back to the show.
So although it's a very static number, one thing that we know, we can change it, we can improve it, and it correlates absolutely linearly proportionally with cardiovascular health as well. But, for example, when I measure my patients, I measure the continuous VO2, which is the oxygen consumption. So basically, I measure how efficiently the battery, the nanobattery, the electron transport chain in each mitochondria uses the oxygen to create the ATP. And so this depends, first, number one, you gotta have a heart that pumps the blood in a very fluid, regular frequency. And these big highways, the arteries are open. And the interesting thing is that you have several layers of pulsation. So the first one that everybody knows, when you touch your pulse and you feel the heart, right?
Yeah.
And we all know about this, and we follow the resting heart rate, your maximal heart rate. And yes, this gives you a pretty good idea of your overall health. But there's so much between, That's where the HRV that more and more people start knowing about, but no one understands it, comes into play. And there's different frequencies that you can extract from each when you follow the heartbeats and you measure the time in milliseconds, and then you can actually see when certain hormones are released. And it's so important for analyzing sleep and how sleep is also related to the work of your heart. So if your heart is not healthy, which means it's not getting enough oxygen itself, is not pumping in the right, proper frequency, to the rest of the body and the lungs, then everything starts cropping up. It's cropping down, I'm sorry. And I don't know, did I explain?
You nailed it. Anytime someone talks HRV, my ears perk up. And I would love to, you said people don't really understand it. Dig into HRV a little bit and kind of how you are analyzing it with your clients.
So the heart rate variability, it's something that have been used for decades. In cardiac surgery and cardiology has been one of the metrics that we follow after surgery and after certain events to see how well the patient is going to do. So the general number HRV, this is the variations between two heartbeats, and there's a long and short term. So they're called RMSSD and CNND. And then usually the tracker devices and everything that most people know, they generalize it. They have a little bit different algorithms, but it comes down to the average number. Most of them measure it in rest. It's used in the biofeedback. What it means in terms of cardiovascular physiology. So the heart, the one that you feel the pulse, it's a beat. So the beat is several pulses, several wave pulses that are summarized. And then when they resonate in a certain frequency, it creates the beat. It's very similar to the musical instruments, right? You pull it, and there's vibrations with different frequencies, but they're close to each other, they create the beat. The same thing happens in the heart, and the heart creates this beat. So each end organ, kidney, brain, muscle, liver, digestive organ, each one of these tissues are end tissues. So they receive this signal that carries the nutrients and the oxygen and all that. But they themselves, they have something that's called microcirculation. And this microcirculation has its own frequency. So for example, for the brain in rest, it's about 6 beats per minute. It can go anywhere between 3 and 24. For the breathing, which is very tightly related to the high frequency of the heart when you study the heart rate variability, it's also between 6 and when you push it, it can go to 62. And this is associated with taking the breath, the inhalation and exhalation. And the center that receives and creates these beats is in the medulla oblongata, in the brain. So the same thing, for the kidneys. The kidneys is a very interesting organ because the frequency there is super high. That's why when you put in open heart surgery, we put someone on a pump, on an artificial heart lung, machine that like pumps the blood for them until we fix the heart. So the heart stays free of blood and like empty, so we can work on it. We cannot do it for longer than a certain period of time because the kidneys are going to fail. So the kidneys, in order to work, they need much, much higher frequency because they cannot extract, like, for example, the heart can extract up to like 60, almost 70%, sometimes even 80% of the oxygen from the red blood cells. The kidneys can extract less than 25%. So they need more higher quality of that. And then because their own resonant frequency, like a natural frequency of their microvasculature, like opening and closing of the little arterioles and capillaries, is a much higher rate, then resonance never happens. So even when the heart beats or the pump sends blood flow to the kidney is not open. It stays closed. So nothing goes to the kidney. The kidney eventually dies. So that's why after open heart surgery, most of the complications are kidney complications or stroke. But doing all of this, you realize a lot of little details in the physiology that can be applied to daily life. So heart rate variability, the number that you know, reflects overall health actually pretty well. Based on many, many studies done on pro athletes. Actually, Finland was one of the first countries that started doing this like in a much bigger sample of people. And yes, there was a strong correlation between performance and HRV, the way you feel very objectively with the HRV. And then in the cardiac literature, for example, if your general HRV, I described, it's like a number that everybody can calculate in a different way, but approximately the same. If it drops under a certain number, for example, under 20 milliseconds, it's highly associated with high blood pressure. Or patients that already have built-up plaques in their heart, if the HRV start dropping below 20, this is associated with progressive atherosclerosis and a heart attack. But the variations show you how adaptive the background, which is the autonomous nervous system, is, and the background is the one that controls the heartbeats, right? So the heart beats because there's a blood coming into it, but also it's regulated by 3 separate signals that are, 2 of them come from the brain indirectly, the sympatheticus and the parasympatheticus. This is the autonomic nervous system, controls the heartbeat. And there's a natural beat that's inside the sinus node. So you see, it's like super complex. It's complex at the same time. We are oversimplifying it, and to some extent it works. 60 to 70% of the time it works because yes, high HRV generally better. But then I hear something else that is very disturbing for me. I hear, okay, but everybody has their own HRV. Okay, this is not true because if you're a human being, you have all these organs that work. They need optimization. And when they're in optimal working and you feel good, your overall night heart rate variability calculated by the WHOOP algorithms or Oura algorithms or Garmin algorithms, and you're a male and you're like in your 40s or 50s and you're more than, 5'9", your HRV has to be in the 50s at least. If you...
Yeah.
Right.
That's like the line in the sand.
What do you mean?
You got to be over 50. That's like when we start seeing numbers below that, we know there's something's going on. Some sort of stressor that is showing up that is not that needs to be fixed. There's something holding you back.
That's right. The time series, when you calculate all this, are important because it takes time for the blood to travel from the heart to the end organ, let's say to the brain. And you have this distance. And that's where the time in milliseconds for HRV, it reflects basically how much time this organ had to absorb all the nutrients that come from the blood, all the oxygen that comes to the blood. And this is like for how long this microcirculation was open to receive what the heart was sending. Yeah. And then the heart also is a two-way path. The heart also receives a lot of information back from the end organs and then adapts and responds. And this is the heart rate variability basically shows you how the adaptability
Yeah.
of the cardiovascular system to the needs of the body that change. You can imagine they change second for second, right?
Yeah.
So when you give you one number for overnight,
Yeah.
it's very incorrect. But you can look, especially, I study all of them. But like, for example, Aura, you can look at how the HRV changed overnight, or a Whoop, and you can see, okay, you went up to like almost 120. This is good. Although your average HRV was only like 51, you see your max was like 120. It means that there was some time when the brain got flashed, when you went into that like perfect resonance, and the brain tissues receive enough of everything to do the job and release this growth hormone that you need so much, and gonadotropic, hormone and all that.
When you think about kind of like the resilience of HRV, so there's some sort of stressor that comes into your life or some sort of life change, do you expect there to be large fluctuations? For example, if you go on vacation, are you going to just immediately see, assuming less stress because you're just sitting at a beach hanging out somewhere, you get to sleep without an alarm, things like that, all of a sudden it could jump 10, 15, 20 points higher. Or most recently, I started training in the morning, and it's probably been like 3 weeks of really bad HRV. And then just recently, it's like back to normal. Like, but that transition from waking up at like 7 to like 5:45 is shown up hardcore in the numbers that come back.
But it's going to pay off, Anders, like for sure. Because once you start going into your natural circadian rhythms, which is, synchronizing everything that's like your choices, when you're going to wake up, when you're going to go to bed, and when the peak, all these like hormones release from, the brain and synchronize with your adrenals and the rest of the organs, you're going to see the benefits. But yes, it takes a little time. When you're younger, it can happen in 3 days. When you're like a little bit older, it's going to take some time. But once you start seeing the results, they're like, you're not going back. And that's the motivation, and that's the metacognition when you realize, I don't need to take a pill. I just have to wake up early and do my workout. And then you see the numbers moving. But you're absolutely right. When you strain, so changing habit is very hard, and it overstimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which naturally makes your resting heart probably is like higher too. And the HRV naturally is going to go down because everything in you is on alert. You're focused. You're trying to adapt and adjust, right? It's like taking a step up. And of course, everything, you put an effort and you exhaust in energy, and then you're on the step. And then, you are stabilized and you optimize, and then you look for the next challenge and you go again up. But for the vacation, it's very interesting. It depends. Travel, of course, is a huge hurdle. Like it brings everything down, especially if it's jet lag involved. Changing the environment always is stressful, even if you don't recognize it. If you're super excited to be on the Hawaiian beach, it's still, the travel itself, the different house, the different bed, everything affects you. And it is beautiful because it gives you this mental kick and you're happy and you're doing something new, but don't expect to see jump in the HRV.
I found that alcohol specifically crushes my HRV. Is there like a particular reason for that?
Not enough practice, Doug.
Poison.
Increase the amount. Your body will figure it out.
Got to acclimate.
In the Bulgarian culture, like people drink rakia for everything. Rakia is grappa. It's like alcohol with almost 60%. It's a drink with a 60 to 70% alcohol, and people do it for everything. Can you believe that? But we know that the alcohol is there's no question about it. There's nothing good about alcohol except, I don't know. Nothing. There's no exception. It's bad. When you drink, just prepare. You're gonna see.
Things are exciting. That's the only good part.
What is it?
I said, just turns you into like a 6-year-old. You're just chatty and happy, and things feel good, and then everything else.
But let me ask you something else, Anders. Didn't you have like these mornings when you wake up, you haven't had a sip of any alcohol, and you feel like you can conquer the world, you can fly? And you feel like a 6-year-old that can run and
I
make
am
flips.
only saying that for commentary on a podcast. I am the
No
least
doubt.
drinker that it took me a long time, but I'm even at the place where I could just look at friends now and go, no, not doing that. But people have stopped asking me if I want drinks because they know the answer is no.
Right. There's a lot of social pressure. I know.
Yeah.
I in New York City, this is the scene of New York City.
Yeah.
This is my native culture is this. And I myself got a big hit from this because I felt like the only way I can socialize is I have a few drinks. And then I realized I can't think on the next day. I cannot solve my differential equations because my brain is stuck. And it's just like going round and around. And then it's just to a point where initially I was like crying, I have a glass of water and I'm going to pretend this is actually gin or vodka. And then I'm just like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to have tea and I'm not going to lie. And I'm just going to have my tea and be happy. And that's it. Now, like hitting 50, even if I have, I love red wine to smell it. But that's about it. Like, I just don't want to poison my lap.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is. The word intoxicated means that there's lots of toxins in your body and you probably don't want those.
Right. Alcohol goes directly to the brain. You know that, right? It's just the brain cells, just like they take the glucose directly, that's how they take alcohol. So it goes directly to the mitochondria and it blocks them. It's just like the worst thing you can do. But anyway, if you decide to do it consciously, it's different because you understand what's going to happen. You understand that
What about marijuana? Would marijuana be the same, or is it?
No. Marijuana, it's very different because it's not a poison. Actually, it could be a medication in a certain circumstances.
Okay.
When everything that you start doing it regularly and you be dependent on it for well-being, I think it's negative because you're tied to something and you want to be free. You want your own chemical lab to work so well and you be your master chemist. So you know when to produce your own dopamine and serotonin,
Right,
or insulin. I understand like everything has a place to help you get to a point where you can go on your own. You know how the kids, when they start walking, they need a little help. You hold their hand, they do a little walker thing, and then they run. And that's, for specifically for marijuana and some of this, I don't know what they are, like herbs, plants. They have the purpose, for certain situations. But of course, they impact your physiology. Of course, they interfere with the way you're going to perform. That's not normal. That's
right.
not the optimal health, right? The idea is like you build up your lifestyle, you build up your pattern of living, your pattern of thinking to a point where you don't depend on anything. You just wake up, you are free to fly and do anything you want.
Let's circle back to the beginning of the show. Anders said you have a very cool term called your physiological footprint. Is that something that you coined? And of course, what exactly is that?
So the physiological footprint is something that shows you directly how your life, daily choices impact your physiology. And by physiology, it's health and how you feel. It's everything. And it's associated with a certain bioparameters that you can measure in the blood. It's certain parameters you can measure with the, vital signs. But when you zoom in, you look at every little detail of what happened in these 20 minutes when I was on a call with a partner and my blood pressure shot up off the roof, and then it took me 3 hours to bring it down. When I was so, focused on preparing for the call and taking the call that I was sedentary for, 300 minutes. So, and you can see the impact of this on your body immediately. So if you don't know, if you're in the dark, it's going to be, whatever, it's like, I earn my money, whatever. But once you see what actually you did, you're like, maybe I'm going to plan this better and not going to do it that way. Because what it shows how, I was just going to give you very rough examples. Like the glucose probably shot up then went straight down. Then you probably like felt very uncomfortable and, fatigue, and you wanted to have a drink. And then, this is like the short-term impacts, and the long-term impacts are going to be, your sleep is going to be bad. Then on the next day, you're not going to be ready to go for your exercise. You're going to be like, I feel very groggy. I'm not going to do it. So everything has consequences. And once you see them, when you light up the dark spots, and these are the potholes on the road when you drive a car in the dark. And if you have the light and you see it, you avoid them. And you do like a little turns and your car is like good. But if you don't see them and you don't know about them, you just like drive through the potholes, and then before you know, your axle is down and your tires are gone, and you need a new car, you need a new body. The physiological footprint goes with something very specific that you can recognize and develop a conscious feeling. It's like an internal intuition about it, and like very roughly, it could be joy, or it could be fatigue, could be even like depression, or like some sadness, or any feeling that objectively you connect to the lifestyle event. That's not necessarily like, when I say lifestyle event, it sounds like something exclusive. No, like everyday thing. For example, when you wake up, how this impacted this is your physiological print, your HRV, your resting heart rate. Everything was off because you were uphealing. You were increasing in order to go. So that's one thing in quantum chemistry different from the classic physics, is that there is no continuation. Nothing is continuous. Everything is on a jump. So you build up certain energy, certain skills, and then you go to the next step. But although it looks like overnight, it's not overnight. It takes effort, it takes time, it takes consistency, and then you're like on the next step, and then everybody, oh, you look amazing. How are you 60? You can ride marathons. And the same thing happens the other way around. You sort of like drop off the wagon, you start doing your crappy sluggy thing, you sit like this, you hold me like that, you eat bad food, you don't exercise. And then initially everything, from a month or two, everything looks good. And then you step on the scales like, whoops, my fat percentage increased with 10%. But it didn't happen overnight. It's just like the quants are a certain amounts that like, they're like the steps instead of being continuous. And we are a little bit more prone to think in this continuous way. We expect to see this continuous change, increase or decrease, while actually the factual way everything is working in the body is like in a quantum, steps. And yeah,
you just said that word. You just said that word, quantum. One thing that we were wanting to know from this show was you had another term that we all thought was very interesting called cellular quantum chemistry. What exactly is that?
Oh my gosh.
As simple as you can explain it.
Yeah, and make it as relevant as possible to people that just want to be healthier, kind of regular people that want to train and eat well and be healthy.
Okay, so I am really gonna try to do a good job here. My husband hates me. I tried to explain this to him for 15 years, and he's like, I still cannot understand this. But so imagine how
today's your best shot.
The solar panel, right? Just imagine a solar panel. You know how it works, right? So you have plus and minus that eventually collects energy that comes from the sun, right? The sun has like these quants of light that hit something, the semiconductors, they do something inside, and then you have voltage, electric energy that is collected between two plates. So absolutely the same process. I'm oversimplifying it, but very similar process happens inside every cell. So you have like, several trillions of cells, and each one of them has several hundreds of organs called mitochondria. And inside of each mitochondria, there's like several hundred thousand, sometimes, depends on the organ, of something that's called electron transport chain. So this is the nanobattery inside the cell. These nanobatteries are located on both sides or inside the membranes of the mitochondria, and then drive a process very similar to that. On one end of the boundary is a substrate called NADH, and this is the end product of all the nutrition's breaking down. from the glucose to the beta oxidation of the fats to the proteins, the amino acids. And then the next, this is the plus end. I'm sorry, the minus end. And then the plus end of the battery is the copper, and the copper holds the oxygen. So oxygen comes from the blood, it diffuses through the blood to the end organ, which goes through this little nano battery. So imagine it's like a micro nano scale thing. And oxygen is kept right there where the plus of the battery is, and hydrogen is kept where the minus the battery is. And this is very fluid and adaptable. It depends on, so NADH comes from nutrition and oxygen comes from breath. So the two things are the two sides of the battery. And then the electrons go between that and go from the NADH to go to the oxygen. Very similar to what happens in like photosynthesis and the solar panels, right? This process of going from here to there inside the membrane creates electromagnetic potential. And this electromagnetic potential basically drives the energy that's locked in quants in the ATP. ATP are the dollars in the body, so you cannot store them. You use them or you lose them, or they're made on demand. So, and that's why I call the muscle mass, the skeletal muscle mass, the generator of energy in the body, because everything else is like sort of gets like a steady state by age of 23 maybe, and the only other tissue that changes in a good way is the muscle mass. So that's where the quants are, and once you zoom in, it's almost like a fractional geometry. It looks very confusing, but then once you like break it down, it just becomes one line, and you can like actually see the ends of the line. How much oxygen you give, how much NADH you can create, so your body can meet the needs of the ATP without going into like this other side biochemical reactions that creates environment to unlock epigenetics that creates the disorder. And to simplify that, so you go from this nano, you explain, you visualize it, and you realize that, yes, if I didn't exercise today, I should not eat. Because what happens is that, especially like after age of, 40, we think exercise is a hobby, and it is not, because of this exact reason. If you don't exercise, you don't have like the skeletal muscle mass, the only muscle mass that actually requires a little bit more, by this I mean oxygen, and pulls all this lakes of static blood that are like in the liver, in the spleen, in the lower extremities, especially if you like sit and like stand up all day. This blood doesn't circulate. So all the hemoglobin, which is basically iron, gets, let's call it, rustic. And if on top of this, you have higher glucose that creates bad hemoglobin, you drop the oxygen in inappropriate places. So that's where the nano comes, the quantum chemistry, because everything comes down to one molecule. And there are like trillions of them, of course. And for a long time, when you're young, you can ignore like little things, but then when you get older and you start like you hitting the bottom, you have to like think in that way. You have to become very impeccable into like managing your energies. And your energies are like what you eat, because everything that comes in, what you eat, understand how you digest what you eat, and then how you breathe. And the only way you can improve breathing, and I mentioned in women, you improve breathing by developing the upper body and focusing on the upper body musculature. And many women ignore this because you focus on the beauty and on aesthetics, and it's not necessarily the healthy choice. And by this, you're improving the oxygen delivery. And nothing in physiology is more bad or good. It can be bad or good. It's just you want this optimal for you. What's good for me probably is horrible for you, Travis, or maybe even better for you, Anders. Everybody's so different, and we're different at the same time. To make it even more complicated, it changes as we during the seasons. Every day depends on what you take, at this period of our lives. So that's the tool I want to build. Something that helps you adapt. The adaptability is life and health and success. And yeah, the adaptability comes down to this understanding. I feel like people that understand and they see, they're much more careful and particular and wise the choices they make.
Yeah. When it comes to those choices, like as we get older, like obviously we are a podcast that talks about lifting weights, and we love lifting weights. But what kind of on the activity side or sports side, or would you consider to be kind of like the best routes to go as people are looking for kind of optimizing their health over time?
So you're not gonna like what I'm gonna say, but I have been doing this for like 15 years. And I did it on myself first, and my family, and all these fools that follow me. So I believe that if you don't exercise, you should not eat. It's like if you feel hungry, you should like develop that instinct that you have to exercise, right? And so when I was like younger, like tennis and a little running, a little yoga was good enough for me. But as I age, I understand I have to do resistance training. So I do it every day. And for example, we're very different. My husband works on different muscle groups, in a different days. He also works out every day. And it could be anywhere between 10 minutes to hour and a half, depends on your time, depends on how good you feel. But I don't skip a day. I believe that if you're going to eat, you have to keep up your muscle, because the DNA, the RNA, the environment you create from that, like, sponging out the need, nothing can compensate. I think 24 hours is too long. Like if I don't exercise, I'm hungry. I don't feel well. I don't sleep well. I feel it and objectively can see it. And then, this is the resistance and muscle. I personally am very focused on my upper body and the core muscles because, 5 years ago, my HRV started like crapping down because my hormones started dropping. And I try all kinds of things. I do like cleansing, I increase my sleep, I took supplements, everything you can imagine. And then I signed for a friend of mine started CrossFit, and she's like, come with me. And I did it for like, maybe like less than 3 weeks. And my HRV increased 25%. I felt better. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. This is what I needed. And now I'm addicted to it in a very good way, because I do it in a way that I don't have to travel with my here, they're like right here.
There you go.
Every time I feel a little jittery, that's like my marijuana, right? So I feel good when I do it. And then for the cardiovascular, when I used to do a lot of surgeries and work in a hospital, I used to take the stairs or drink a coffee. And now I can't afford that because coffee makes me crazy. So in my house, I have like stairs. So I run 10 times up and down. It's like my coffee shop. And also like make sure my heart rate now goes to like 195, and that keeps me up. So I calculate all these numbers for my patients, and I give them their specific goals and numbers, what to look for. And again, I think if you're going to sleep every day, if you're going to eat every day, you have to exercise every day. There's no exceptions.
Yeah.
Just like.
Can't wait to get our feedback. Is it going to be like Anders when you're like the 80-20 rule?
Yeah, I was also teeing up when we first met. We talked about tennis a little bit, and that is, in my opinion, it's like the sport we get to play forever. I think you're a big tennis player, right?
Yeah, tennis is amazing because you jump, and I feel like every time you jump, the same thing with running. There's something with the diaphragm and the muscle, just the whole breathing synchronizes with the brain and just brings you like this happiness. You do it for for 45 minutes, and then you dopamine surge and you feel calm and like great.
Yeah. I think that tennis is going to be when I no longer have children running around my house, the sport that I'll end up playing for a very long time. It's like it's very athletic. You sprint and you have to play for like 2 hours. You got to move side to side. There's jumping, hand-eye coordination, competition, friendship, high fives at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a if you were to line tennis and golf up of like the two sports that people like to play for a very long time into the late years, tennis dominates golf.
Yeah.
It's
And
not even
actually, studies have shown the people that play tennis, they live with like almost 20 longer, healthier years.
Yeah, I think the tennis is. I think we're in. Where were Doug? Were we in Vegas? And we were all talking about like the thing that you would like. What is like the sport you want to do, or like what would you want to
Oh
play?
yeah.
Tennis was my answer. Everybody thought I was going to choose surfing, which I love surfing too.
I
But
love surfing too.
tennis is. I think
I'm all
tennis
about
really.
pickleball now.
Oh,
Pickleball is awesome too.
Nash.
Yeah.
I love our pickleball. We got a great athlete. He's becoming my favorite. I'm not gonna say names, but I haven't asked if I could, but he is the best. So
Dude, we got to get you connected with. We coach the #1 pickleball player in the world, dude. We got to get you on his team.
I'm working with the #1 pickleball player from you guys.
Oh, nice. I didn't know you're doing it all. There
Oh
you go.
yeah, he's the man. I love him.
Oh yeah. Sick. There you go.
Right,
I didn't know you got brought into that team. Good work.
he is the man. I love it.
Yeah. Just slays people out there. I turn on his YouTube channel and you go, oh, this is unfortunately most of the time when you're driving around the park and you see the pickleball, you go, I don't want to be a part of that game at all. That is not impressive.
Oh.
When you see them boys actually getting after it,
My guy will kick your ass. He'll make you
like-
look silly. Yeah.
yeah, it's a significant, yeah, it's like really badass ping pong.
Yeah. Yeah. And he loves weightlifting, man. He loves it. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about cleans and like, yeah, it's crazy. Love
And
it.
what
Yeah.
about rock climbing? Rock climbing is another very favorite thing. Also,
Oh yeah. Beast.
That one doesn't have the cardiovascular benefits of it.
the rock climbing
Yeah.
Depends on how long you're on that rock, bro. Like, I mean, how you
climbing
going? You know, like,
is very, very cardio. It's everything. Actually, it's
Yeah.
like tennis. And it involves the core and the breathing and,
Yeah.
just like this
depends
the
on what
thought
kind
process
of rock
applying.
climbing. You know, like if you go to I used to run, believe it or not, my first real job when I was at the Limit Training Center, I managed a world gym and we had a indoor rock climbing center. And it was, we actually had the junior nationals there. I wouldn't call that cardiovascular because it was, they're pretty quick up the wall, but you go up a big mountain, you're on that, base in 30 minutes. That's,
And also like for your mental state, it's just like planning every movement and be so conscious of everything you do. And you're in
Yes.
tune with, the entire system.
it's crazy. It's scary. I did a little bit and I'm like,
Yeah, rock climbing, I feel like the adventure part of it is a big piece of that as well. You got to go practice. Don't just do it in the
Yeah.
gym. You got to go out and do it.
Right.
So, Dr. Kamellia, really stoked we get to play on the same team and work with a couple of the same people. And where can people find you and learn more about your practice?
I have, you can schedule a free intro call with me on my website, quantumheartinc.com. Very, just like a name I came up with like almost 20 years ago. And it's just still that everybody's telling me this is very unsuccessful business because no one understands what it is. It's too long. It's not like, something easy to remember. But anyway, www.quantumheartinc.com.
Is that INC?
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, Inc. There you go. Quantumheartinc.com.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're based out of New York. Do you work with people all around the country?
I do because I also use allopathic medicine when I work with patients. Some of them need a little bit of tuning with certain medication that you need prescription, but this is the one I can do only in New York State because that's why I'm licensed to. But the rest of the product I'm using, which is lifestyle tracking, implementing changes that are very targeted and to the point. I work with people all over, mostly people in, on the East Coast and Texas and the West Coast.
I love it. Coach Travis Bash.
Ashley.com. You can read my articles for free at gymwear.com or come see me, Triad, North Carolina area. Come see me at Rise Indoor Sports.
I love it. Douglas E. Larson.
Bet. On Instagram, Douglas C. Larson.
And I am Anders Varner at Anders Varner, and we are Barbell Shrugged, Barbell_Shrugged. And make sure you get over to aratelab.com. That is the signature program inside Rapid Health Optimization. And you can check out all things lab, lifestyle, performance, analysis, and coaching. So make sure you head over to aratelab.com. Friends, we'll see you guys next week.